have said before that I am an alcoholic, but I've never told you the details of what it did to my life. So I'm telling my story tonight for one reason, hoping to reach some of the 30 million people battling alcoholism in America right now.
What happens when a respected journalist spends years hiding a struggle that almost tears her life apart? Viewers saw her on television every night, calm and confident, but very few knew what she was fighting once the cameras were off. Her rise looked smooth from the outside, yet the pressure behind the scenes kept building. The signs were there, but even the people closest to her did not fully understand how deep her pain had become. Everything finally came into public view when she could no longer carry the weight alone. Keep watching as we uncover the real story of Elizabeth Vargas and the long fight she had to face on her own. Early life and background.
There are days when you wake up and you feel so horrible that the only thing that will make you feel better is more alcohol.
Elizabeth Vargas was born Elizabeth Ann Vargas on September 6, 1962, in Paterson, New Jersey, into a family that moved often because of her father's military career. Her father, Rafael Ralph Vargas, served as an officer in the U.S. Army, and her mother, Ann Vargas, worked as a part-time English teacher. From a very young age, Elizabeth lived the life of a military child. Frequent relocations, exposure to different cultures, and the routines that come with Army life. Those early years shaped the way she saw the world. Moving from base to base taught her to adapt quickly, to observe details that others might miss, and to find ways to connect with people in new places, habits that later fit naturally with a career in reporting. Her childhood included long stretches overseas. When she was 4, the family lived in Okinawa. Later, they were posted in Germany and Belgium, and she spent part of her adolescence attending Heidelberg American High School in Germany. The experience of studying and socializing with students from many countries added to her curiosity about other people's stories and lives. For a young person who would become a journalist, those moves were less of a disruption and more of a kind of informal training. They taught her how to meet strangers, ask questions, and adjust to new settings quickly. Growing up as the child of a military officer and an educator also gave her a mix of discipline and an appreciation for education. Her mother's interest in books and language provided a quiet counterpoint to the structured routine of Army life, and that balance between structure and the world beyond it would be a constant in her early development. At home, the family background included multiple cultural strands. Vargas traces part of her ancestry to Puerto Rico on her father's side and to Irish-American roots on her mother's side. That mixed heritage gave her a connection to more than one cultural identity. She has said in interviews that she identifies with her Hispanic roots and that speaking Spanish was part of her life growing up. The combination of languages, cultures, and frequent moves made her comfortable in hybrid settings, where she could mix and match the pieces that would later help when interviewing people from different backgrounds. School years mattered a lot to Vargas. At Heidelberg American High School, she first tested out public speaking and community involvement, activities that quietly nudged her toward journalism. The high school setting in Germany was not like a small town in the United States. It tended to gather children of diplomats, military officers, and international professionals. That environment made conversations broader and gave students a sense of being part of a global network. For Vargas, being around people who had lived in many places made questions about why things happened the way they did feel natural. She began to see events as stories with causes, effects, and human faces, the raw material of reporting. After high school, Vargas enrolled at the University of Missouri in Columbia, a school known for its journalism program. While there, she worked at ComU-TV, the university's broadcast outlet, and at KBIA, the campus radio station. Those hands-on roles mattered more than any lecture she might have heard, because they put her in the position of producing actual news, not just studying it. She learned the mechanics of reporting, how to write to picture, how to edit pieces so they fit a time slot, and how to show restraint when a story required it. Those early shifts from consumer to producer of news sharpened skills that would later define her style: careful phrasing, steady delivery, and a drive to find the exact detail that made a story stick. Life on a university newsroom floor is a practical education. Vargas learned how to interview people who were nervous, how to coax detail from someone who didn't want to talk, and how to shape a short segment into something that felt complete. Cohn TV offered her the kind of practice that graduates praise for years: running cameras, writing voiceovers, standing in front of lights, and learning how much preparation matters before a live shot. She was not only learning a craft, but also testing what kind of journalist she wanted to be. The work at Cohn and KBIA pushed her to be direct. She learned to choose precise words, to be economical with time, and to respect the audience's need for clarity. Those habits of clarity and directness can be traced back to the discipline of reporting on a student station where every minute and every line mattered. The University of Missouri also connected her to faculty mentors and to a network of alumni who prized rigorous reporting. Faculty members remember her as someone with energy and focus, a student who volunteered to take on extra shifts and to host campus programs when needed. The university's environment, with its mix of classroom instruction and newsroom pressure, encouraged students to think about journalism as a public service. For Vargas, that approach resonated. She gravitated toward stories that involved people, personal struggles, and institutions in tension, and she found the investigative impulse in small campus projects that required digging to find a full picture. After graduating in 1984 with a degree in journalism, Vargas moved into the professional world. Her first paid reporting jobs were at local stations. She worked at Cohn as a student, but then took positions at KTVN in Reno and later at KTVK in Phoenix. Those early postings meant she was on the front lines of local news, covering community events, fires, local crime, and school board meetings. Local reporting is a form of apprenticeship. It teaches a new reporter how to be fast, how to verify facts on a deadline, and how to build sources in a town where everyone knows one another. Vargas learned how to write under pressure and how to shape a narrative that viewers could follow in a single broadcast. Those early assignments also forced practical problem-solving: how to gather footage in bad weather, how to work with a one-person crew, and how to tell a complete story when time and resources were limited. Rise in journalism. Elizabeth Vargas moved from local news into national television through a steady sequence of jobs that tested her reporting skills and widened her audience. After graduating from the University of Missouri with a journalism degree, she gained hands-on experience at university broadcast outlets and then at smaller market stations. Those early jobs were the kind that teach the practical details of television reporting: meeting deadlines, producing tight copy for short segments, operating with small crews, and building local sources. Over time, she worked in progressively larger markets, and that gradual rise gave her the ability to handle more complex stories and to work live under pressure. The pattern of learning in small markets is a common route for many TV reporters, and Vargas followed it closely, taking assignments that forced her to adapt quickly and report with accuracy. She used each stop as an opportunity to refine how she asked questions and how she shaped short pieces that viewers could follow easily. Within a few years, she had shown enough craft and calm under pressure to attract the attention of network news executives. Her first major network job came in the early 1990s when she joined NBC News. At NBC, she worked as a correspondent for programs such as Now with Tom Brokaw and Katie Couric, and for Dateline NBC. Working for NBC gave her national exposure and let her handle stories with more resources and larger audiences than any local station could offer. The network assignments included general reporting and substitute anchor duties, and the work demanded versatility. She found herself reporting long-form pieces for Dateline, as well as filling in on the Today Show or weekend editions of NBC Nightly News when needed. Those roles required a reporter who could move from investigative interviews to quick live hits, and Vargas showed she could do both. Her time at NBC was a key step because it placed her in a national newsroom environment where the standards for accuracy and the scrutiny on phrasing are much higher. That experience helped prepare her for the next move, a long-term role at ABC News. In 1996, Vargas joined ABC News, and that move opened a wider set of opportunities. At ABC, she began as the newsreader on Good Morning America, and then took on correspondent and anchor roles across the network's schedule. ABC gave her the chance to work on multiple platforms: morning broadcast, primetime news magazines, and special reporting packages. The variety allowed Vargas to develop a style that combined steady on-air delivery with an interest in human-centered reporting. Her assignments ranged from domestic human interest stories to international coverage, and the more she produced, the more she became a recognizable face to American audiences. As she rose within ABC, Vargas was trusted with more significant roles. She reported for 2020 and anchored World News Tonight Saturday and Sunday editions. In the mid-2000s, she became co-anchor of 2020 and later co-anchor of World News Tonight. Those anchor roles placed her among a small group of women who had held prime network evening news positions. Being named to those chairs reflected both the network's confidence in her and the visibility she had earned through major reporting projects. Her work included breaking news coverage, long-form reports, and interviews with newsmakers, all of which required calm under pressure and careful sourcing. During her ABC tenure, Vargas covered a wide range of stories, often traveling overseas to report on major events. She reported from Iraq during significant political moments and covered breaking international stories as part of the World News team. These assignments tested her ability to handle logistical challenges in the field and to translate complex situations into clear on-air reports for viewers. Her work was not limited to studio anchoring. It included field reporting under difficult conditions, which further shaped her reputation for steadiness and competence. As her profile rose, Vargas also took on special projects and documentaries that allowed a deeper investigative approach than a standard news brief would permit. Her time at ABC also included some high-profile live coverage that garnered recognition. On several occasions, she led live reporting for major news events, and those broadcasts required rapid verification and careful language when facts were still emerging. Live coverage is unforgiving. Anchors and correspondents must report with precision while avoiding speculation. Vargas's experience in both local newsroom pressure and network workflows helped her keep composure during such moments. The trust she earned from producers and executives led to more prominent roles, including primetime investigative pieces and anchor responsibilities. Personal struggles. Alongside her professional life, Elizabeth Vargas faced persistent personal struggles that eventually became public and part of her public narrative. She has long spoken about severe anxiety and panic attacks that began before her national prominence. Those panic episodes affected her ability to work and to function in stressful live situations. Over time, she developed coping patterns that included heavy drinking, and her alcohol use escalated into what she later described as addiction. The pattern of anxiety-feeding alcohol use and alcohol-worsening anxiety is a cycle many people with dual diagnoses experience. Vargas has said that her drinking began early in her career and that it became a way to manage the underlying panic and to numb a level of fear that she found difficult to control alone. The decision to speak about these issues publicly came after interventions and repeated treatment attempts. Her willingness to make the struggle public marked a notable moment in an industry where anchors often keep private matters out of sight. When Vargas first disclosed her alcoholism publicly, she did so amid a period of treatment and returned to rehab. In 2013, she went into treatment, and then, in the years that followed, returned to care multiple times as she tried to maintain sobriety and manage anxiety. Her disclosures were careful and framed by the context of recovery. She spoke about the shame and secrecy that had accompanied her drinking, the times she thought she had recovered only to relapse, and the need for professional help. Public figures who enter treatment often face intense media attention, and Vargas's choice to be candid about relapses and to describe the difficulty of recovery made her account feel raw and real to many viewers. She later wrote a memoir that gave a fuller account of how panic disorder and addiction intersected in her life and career. That memoir laid out events in more chronological detail and connected childhood fears, career pressures, and the progression of addiction. The book became a way to shape the narrative of her struggles in her own voice rather than leaving it to outside coverage. The public admission and memoir also affected her professional standing in complex ways. Some viewers and colleagues responded with sympathy and support, while others questioned how personal struggles should intersect with roles that require steady public trust. Vargas and network executives had to navigate when she could safely return to work, and what roles would suit her health needs. The network made accommodations at times, and Vargas adjusted her schedule and duties to focus on programs that allowed more control over the environment, such as pre-produced specials and long-form investigative series. For many people in high-pressure professions, managing health needs while sustaining a public career requires compromises. Vargas's path shows both the difficulty of that balance and the ways in which a public confession can alter the trajectory of assignments and responsibilities. Her memoir and interviews also opened conversations about anxiety and addiction in professions where high performance is demanded. Vargas described the physical and emotional toll of panic attacks and the ways alcohol temporarily covered symptoms while ultimately making everything worse. The frankness of her account contributed to public discussions about mental health and substance use disorders among high-achieving professionals. It also illustrated how conditions like panic disorder can remain hidden beneath the performance of competence for years. Her story resonated with some viewers who saw a familiar pattern in their own lives, which is one reason she chose to speak openly about treatment and recovery. Recovery efforts were not linear. Vargas entered and left treatment on multiple occasions before settling into a period of sustained sobriety. Relapse is common in addiction, and her experience reflected that reality. She spoke honestly about returning to rehab when she realized she needed more support, and about the impact of those choices on her family life and marriage. The public nature of her struggle meant that personal setbacks were reported widely, which added stress, but also underlined how the arc of addiction and recovery can be messy and ongoing. In later interviews, she described having achieved sobriety and continuing to use strategies such as meditation and therapy to manage anxiety and maintain recovery. Those long-term strategies became part of her public message about the work of staying well after treatment. The decision to tell her story through a memoir and television interviews allowed Vargas to shape how the public would understand her struggles. The book placed individual events in context, from childhood fears to career pressures, helping readers see a through line rather than isolated incidents. That narrative framing gave her the chance to explain how panic disorder and alcoholism had interacted for years, and to emphasize that recovery is a continuing process rather than a single event. The memoir reached bestseller lists and drew attention not only for the celebrity aspect, but also for the candor of its account. Elizabeth Vargas's path through recovery and into the later phase of her career is shaped by two parallel threads: the personal work of staying sober and managing anxiety, and a professional reinvention that allowed her to use her platform in new ways. After years as a high-profile network anchor, Vargas chose to make her struggles public in a controlled way. And that decision both altered the public's view of her and opened opportunities for projects that fit the new shape of her life. She wrote a memoir that told the story of panic disorder and addiction in her own voice. She struck production deals and hosted investigative series that moved beyond nightly newscasts. And she accepted roles at emerging outlets where the pace and format matched what she could sustain while remaining focused on health and family. Elizabeth Vargas showed that recovery is possible even when life feels completely out of control. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more stories like this.